So if you are speaking, remember to unmute yourself.
Not everyone's muted. Are you doing it now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Very warm welcome to everyone. I'm Father Terry Moran, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the fourth and final session in our series, Faith and Food. As you know, if you've been at the previous sessions, the series was inspired by a decision of the Joint Assembly of the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth, for whom I work, and the Sisters of Charity of New York, for whom Carol D'Angelo, who will be speaking in a moment, works. We decided to recommit ourselves to the vision of Laudato Si, with a special emphasis on food justice and food print. So we're delighted that our topic tonight is community-supported agriculture, relationship with the land, food, and people, with David Hambleton from Sister Hill Farm in Stanfordville, New York, which is a sponsored ministry of the Sisters of Charity of New York. As I said, this is the last session in the series, but we're excuse me. We're going to be continuing in the new year in a little different way. We're going to offer a book discussion group on Sister Mary McCann's book, The Meal That Reconnects, Eucharistic Eating and Global Food Crisis. Some of you may have been on Mary's session. She was our second speaker, I believe. The three sessions are going to be all Mondays, February 5th, March 4th, and April 1st. So you'll receive more information on that in the new year. And we hope many of you will join us for this book discussion group. We've also been recently batting around ideas for two other webinars, at least. One in which sisters can share their stories of more sustainable eating practices in their institutional dining rooms. So what have people done? How they've dealt with food services and things like that. The second is an everything you ever wanted to know session on composting. And maybe Dave, I'm sure you compost up at Sister Hill. Maybe you'll have something to say about that tonight as well. So stay tuned for information on all of that. For our prayer this evening, I'll begin with a reading from Sister Miriam Therese McGillis, who started one of the first CSAs that of religious congregations in Genesis Farm here in New Jersey. So I'll read a little selection from her, and then I'll follow it with a prayer that I just got today in a beautiful Christmas card from the Carmelite nuns in Baltimore. So let's listen to the words of Miriam Therese McGillis. He's reflecting here on eating a bowl of organic vegetarian chili. It occurred to me that this bowl really held rock and soil, minerals and water, and the energy and the heat of the stars. All the ingredients, the beans, onions, garlic, carrots, tomatoes, basil, pepper, and oregano, had once been seeds that I inserted into the soil. Now they were providing me with delight and nourishment. And they would soon become my blood, my bones, my sight, my movement, my thoughts, my prayers. I was overwhelmed by the limitless generosity of the universe and its creator. It was gospel and Eucharist, and a sacrament so simple, so holy, my heart brimmed with gratitude. Let us pray. Jesus, open our souls to receive your life. Open our eyes to paths of peace and cooperation. Open our hearts in care and compassion for all people, Palestinian and Jew, Afghan and Ukrainian and Russian, migrant and homeless, indigenous people and people of color, poor people, children, neglected and hungry in our cities and countries, animals and plants that share our planet facing extinction, our very earth convulsed with heat and rising oceans, fire and flood, earthquake and hurricane and tornado, families decimated, homes lost, towns and cities destroyed. Pour upon us the light of Christmas. Lead us, strengthen us to receive your gift of new and deeper life, and to cut pathways of love and communion in evolution, so others may follow the way of peace. Amen. I now invite Sister Carol D'Angelo, Director of the Office of Justice, Peace, and Care of Creation for the Sisters of Charity of New York, to introduce Dave Hambleton.
And it gives me great pleasure to welcome you and to introduce you, Dave. So David Hambleton is both farmer and director of Sisters Hill Farm. And I went to the website, even though I've known Dave for many, many years, I went to the website to get some clear information. And I really liked one of the first things it said on the website. Sisters Hill Farm wouldn't be the special place it is today without Farmer Dave. And that's very true, Dave, very true. Dave, with the aid of many great apprentices and volunteers, has created a beautiful farm that everyone can be proud to be a part of. Dave shares his many gifts very generously, but first and foremost, I want to say, David, that you are a gift to us. You've been a very special gift to us, to the Sisters of Charity of New York, and to me. Dave's presence and love of the land has borne fruit in many ways. Through Dave's wisdom and leadership, apprentices, volunteers, shareholders, and many different communities in the Manhattan area, Yonkers area, Bronx area have benefited since 1999 from nourishing, colorful food straight from the land. And those of us who belong to a CSA or who go to a farmer's market or grow our own food know what a difference it makes when we can eat food that comes direct from the land, from the farm to the table. Sisters Hill Farm has also grown community in many different ways, as well as food, thanks to Dave. So David developed the CSA from scratch, and of course, he was accompanied by his mentor and Sister Marianne Garista. So I just want to make sure we mention her because she's the one who had the vision and helped bring it to fruition also. But Dave, you've brought an extensive ecological and educational background to Sisters Hill Farm. And Dave's gotten his a degree in environmental studies from Binghamton University. And he has great talents as a carpenter and cabinet maker. I think it important to say in Dave's introduction here that Dave's creativity and ingenuity in developing scale-appropriate tools and systems have benefited the farm. And personally, I have just been amazed when I've gone up and seen some of the creative things you've done in terms of these systems that you've developed. So just as an example, we really get very clean food most of the time. And it's amazing to see how when it's picked, it goes through this washer system. And Dave could even explain more. But Dave, most of all, I want to thank you for your commitment to mentoring the next generation of sustainable farmers. And because of you, these apprentices are continuing to care for earth and the land, which nourishes and sustains us. And Dave, we, the Sisters of Charity of New York, are very grateful to be part of this legacy. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
It's been my pleasure the past 25 years to have worked for the Sisters of Charity and to be a small part of their tremendously valuable mission of working with women, children, and those who are poor, and all these many missions all these years. So it's my great pleasure.
So we look forward now to hearing you. And as we've done in the past 3 sessions, Dave will talk half an hour, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending upon how it goes. And then we'll have this opportunity for question and answer and sharing. So thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Awesome.
Take it away.
Yep. So does everybody see my view now, or I see you, sister, but do I need to do something to make myself the...
No, with this, what we'll do is you
switch.
can just put up, share your screen, and then we don't make you kind of the head person there. You'll see people on the side probably.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so you can see some faces.
Yeah, I just thought maybe I'd speak for a minute or two before I put the slides up, but
terrific.
I'm not sure. Okay, great. So welcome everyone. I'm so glad to be talking to you all tonight. It's an honor and a privilege. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I became interested in being a farmer because I studied environmental studies. And I realized that there was a lot of things that our world was facing, climate change primarily amongst them. And I knew I wanted to be a positive aspect of trying to heal our world. And ultimately that led me to the idea of farming, because farming is such, the choices we make every day of what we put into our mouths, what we buy in a grocery store, how we make our meals and what we consume has one of the largest impacts on what's going on in our world environmentally. So that led me towards farming. So I guess I will, I'll try to share my screen here and let's see what happens. Try to get this thing started from the beginning. There we go. Can everybody see that okay? Great. I see some thumbs up. Excellent. So the title of today's talk basically is Community Supported Agriculture, and I'm going to be talking about relationships with the land, food, and people, and how all of this is interconnected. And that's really relevant to Sisters Hill Farm because our mission is varied, and it includes not just growing food, but nurturing bodies, spirits, communities, and the earth. So we try to look at it in a very holistic way. Here is a view of one of our fields is the very closest to the main barn. And the farm itself is up in Stanfordville, New York, which is in Dutchess County. It's about 70 miles north of the Bronx, the location in Riverdale. So this is, that's a view of that field there. So what is CSA? Sounds like most of you are probably familiar with what CSA is, but basically the acronym is Community Supported Agriculture. And this began as an idea, a way for farms to connect directly with consumers, and particularly consumers who were interested in getting really high quality food, and farmers who were interested in connecting directly with people and feeding them great food. And then you sort of cut out the middleman, so there's less that goes to overhead and grocery stores and intermediaries, trucking, that sort of thing. It's a way to get local, real high quality food to people who care about what they're putting in their bodies and in their mouths. And it's mutually beneficial to both parties. So a little history of Sisters Hill Farm. As Sister mentioned, it's owned and operated by the Sisters of Charity of New York, who have a 200+ year mission of working with women, children, and those who are poor primarily. The property was willed to them by the Halloran family in 1916. And back then it was an active working small farm. They had a caretaker basically, and connected to the barn, there was a place that the sisters called the Hermitage, where a farmer lived. And there was a small, diverse orchard. You know, there were a couple of stanchions for milking cows. And so it was a real diverse, small scale operation. But then for many, many years, it was left fallow. And so in 1995, the sisters expanded their vision statement to include something that said they reverence the earth. and a group of sisters led by director Sister Marianne Garisto, who was in the audience and was my boss for many, many years and is now still our director emeritus. But she, along with many sisters, decided to create a CSA. And she was good friends with Miriam McGillis from Genesis Farm. And they wanted to bring CSA and that statement to life in Stanfordville. So this is a picture of our fields from probably 20 years ago, Andrew and Melissa. And we're just uncovering some early spring lettuces and things. There's broccoli over on the left and arugula and other greens here on the right. But so our mission, as I mentioned, is to grow healthy food which nurtures bodies, spirits, communities, and the earth. Can you all, is the Zoom stuff in the way up here at the top of the screen? No. Okay, great.
No, it's fine. At least
Yeah.
from my screen, it's fine. Yeah.
It's in my way. I can't quite see what the slide says, but that's okay.
We
All right, great.
can move it if we need
Yeah.
to.
Oh, I can move this around. Oh, yes, I can. There we go. Excellent. Thanks. Yeah, so this is just a small sampling of what we grow. We grow a huge variety of produce. For a CSA, our goal really is to try to create as diverse a share each week as we can so that people really don't have to go to the grocery store for the vegetables. So we try to provide as many vegetables as we possibly can so that they can make a diverse and wonderfully healthy meals. So there's a bunch of stuff we picked out specifically to go to the Dutchess County Fair in, I think, 2007 or something. My background, I grew up in Orange County in New York State. I was actually born in Kansas, but when I was 5, we moved here. And I grew up next door to a dairy farm. So I was back in the woods and streams, building forts and catching frogs and playing. And nature was a really important part of my upbringing. My mother would take us on hikes in the woods, and she'd sit down and write poetry or write songs, and my sisters and I would play in the stream and have all sorts of imaginative play and things. So it was really kind of a spiritual experience, even from my early childhood, being in the woods. It was integral to my feelings of connection to the world and, you know, my pleasure and joy. So when I decided to become a farmer, I really wanted to create a life for myself through my career that involved being proactive about trying to heal our broken world. I really wanted to work outside. I love being outside. I wanted to work with my hands, and I wanted to be cooperating with nature and not sort of fighting nature. I wanted to create a sense of community and feel a sense of connection with those people who I fed. And I wanted to begin with small local projects. I didn't want to, you know, fly off to other countries and, you know, try to change the world necessarily, but I wanted to begin small and have the local impact and act locally, as you will, and thinking globally. And I wanted work tasks that were creatively challenging, but not crushing. Sometimes farming certainly can be crushing, and I know there's a lot of mental health issues with farmers. And so I wanted to keep the farm simple and not do a whole lot with it. Most farms of our ilk, of our size, maybe they sell CSA shares. They also go to farmers markets. They also sell to restaurants. They do 5 or 10 different things. And that just makes for a very harried life. So we decided from the beginning just to keep the farm very simple and just do CSA and give shares to those in need, and also donate to food banks and pantries and things, but not to have a multiplicity of marketing avenues. And then finally, I wanted to really mentor others in the field that I love. So try to continue what I've done and grow the impact by teaching other people to farm in a similar way. And this is, I built my own house here. So that's me, the process of me building the house, and then me with my kids when they were very young. My 2 boys here and my wife, they are now much bigger than this. My eldest son is in college and he's 6'5", and my younger son is a high school senior and he's 6'6". And so we're a big bunch of guys. So they don't quite look like this as an old slide, but it's been a good career. So Sisters Hill Farm growth over the years. In 1999, our very first year, we had 40 members. And we grew about 20,000 pounds of produce. And we brought about 20 shares down to the Bronx, and we had 20 shares picked up at the farm. Nowadays, we feed about 400 families. That for us means 315 or so full weekly shares. We have two different options. We have a weekly share and a biweekly share. And the biweekly share means you come to the farm every second week, or you come to the Bronx pickup site every second week. And weekly share means you just come every week. Each year we grow about 100,000 pounds of produce on about 5 acres of actual growing area. So it's quite intensive growing. You'll see some pictures of fields as I move on here. A goal of ours was always to give at least 10% or more to local soup kitchens and families in need. And we do that in a number of ways. We give free shares to families that are in need, as well as subsidized shares. So sometimes we'll have a family that will just say, you know, we're having difficulty making ends meet this year. I can definitely pay something, but not the full amount, you know, and we'll say, well, absolutely, what can we do to work with you? And there are other families where we just give them a completely free share. And then we also contribute shares, or not shares, but contribute vegetables to POTS, part of the solution, a food bank in the Bronx. We give a free share or more every week to we give 4 free shares to Casa Esperanza, a sister-run organization for immigrants, and St. Vincent's Table, we give several shares each week too. And then we've grown and shared more than 1.85 million pounds of produce over the past 25 years. So off that little bit of land, we've produced quite a bit of high quality food for people. This is what it looked like the very first year. I grew pretty much by myself on 1 acre of ground. I did have a local high school student who helped me out 10 or 15 hours a week. And that was really wonderful. I found that I thought I wanted to do it all by myself after working on a larger farm and having a big crew and a lot of activity and a lot of madness and mayhem. I said, oops, forward here. I said, I just want to keep it really simple, but then I realized it's very lonely when you're going super long hours out there in the field all by yourself. So it was really nice to have a little bit of help that year. And so pretty similar to what we're doing today. These were 100-foot beds. Now we have longer beds, 200 and 400-foot beds, but similar growing methods. We used just a little walk behind tractor that first year, but now we have a sort of a fleet of small scale tractors that we utilize for cultivation and working up soil and planting cover crop and all these things. We grow, like I said, a huge variety of crops. So in this picture here, we've got, you know, way over on the left, you have scallions and beans and beets and lettuce of different ages and bigger scallions and older beans and older lettuce and even more mature lettuce, and then carrots and beans. So this would be what I would call a summer succession field. So we plant many things many times. So carrots, for example, we'll plant 10 times a year. Lettuce we'll plant 24 times a year. So every single week of the season, we're planting lettuce. We plant about 1,000 heads of lettuce every week. And some things we just plant a couple of times, like broccoli we plant twice in the spring and twice in the fall because it really doesn't like summer heat. But our goal is really to have as wide a variety as possible throughout the season for everybody. So I know you've been talking a lot about the impacts of our choices and our decisions and basically our food print. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, what does it mean to have a relationship to the land, and how can we relate that to our diets and the choices we make as consumers and eaters. So as a farmer for 25 years on this same land, a relationship to me means a really intimate knowledge. So there isn't a single square inch of this farm that my knees haven't touched. I mean, a lot of this work is hard work, being on your hands and knees from the very first year, picking all the rocks out of the field, to pulling weeds, to harvesting crops. I'm often kneeling. And interestingly enough, there's actually a volunteer that helped on the farm for over 20 years. He's now 95, and he's not coming to the farm in the past 5 years or so, mostly because his wife developed Alzheimer's and he had to care for her at home. but he himself harvested over 1 million pounds of rocks out of these fields. He just saw me doing it one time the very first year, and he saw that I was trying to remove rocks from the field into wheelbarrows and making piles, and he said, I can help with that. You know, how can I be of help? And since then, he's weeded, you know, whenever weeds got out of control for us, he took care of that. He called himself a field sanitation engineer. So he removed weeds and he removed rocks from the fields. So I'm not the only one who I think's knees have touched every aspect of the land, but that kind of intimate knowledge leads to a very close relationship and really understanding land. Similarly, like I know exactly where in field W2 the soil will dry out a few days slower because it has a higher clay content, or in W3 where the roots of a walnut tree that's 60 feet away from the field, the roots find their way all the way into the field and impact the growth of some of the plants on the edge of the field negatively through an allelopathic effect. So these are the kind of things you develop when you really have a sense of the land and you work with the land for years and years and you have a love of nature and things. So I also grew up, as I said, in the fields, walking the woods and playing and in the cow fields and catching frogs and building forts and all those things. But so this is a picture of our distribution area. When we give people food out at the farm, they actually pick their own stuff out of the containers. So we'll say, take up to 2 weeks, as you see here, or 1 bunch radish or beets, and they'll pick up their bunches. They'll weigh up their greens, let's say, if they have a pound of greens, or 2.5 pounds of tomatoes, as you see on that sign. So that's just what it looks like inside our barn when people come pick up stuff. But basically, we're all connected. So the whole idea that we are individuals is kind of a smoke and mirrors thing. And I think this is an important part of thinking about our connection with our food and our connection with the rest of the world and those around us, and the earth itself. Like if we think about our bodies, the composition of our bodies, there are actually less than half of the cells in our bodies are our DNA. The majority of the cells in our bodies are bacteria. So like our microbiome in our gut is not a part of us, and yet it's something that's deeply intertwined with us and connected to us and actually protects us against diseases, cognitive decline, anxiety, depression, a whole slew of things that it has beneficial effect on us. And if we try to disengage ourselves from it through antibiotics or, you know, even being super stressed can negatively affect your microbiome, then your health will suffer as a result, and perhaps even your mental state will suffer as a result. And so I think that's a really interesting analogy or example of how, you know, as much as we think we are independent beings, even our bodies themselves are not completely simply us. You know, there's a connection between us all. So to me as a farmer, the decline of nature is palpable. Like I said, I studied environmental studies in college, and I've lived my whole life, you know, sort of being intimately connected with nature and a nature lover. And one of the things that's most distressing to me, or at least obvious to me, is that like a number of tree species are in severe decline. And so I see the decreasing health of the forest around me. In terms of, like, a good example is hemlocks. All the hemlocks are dying. And that's because of an invasive species called hemlock woolly adelgid that is killing all the needles and causing fungus on them and eating them. And that's exacerbated. It's not just our global market, but it's the fact that the winters don't get as cold as they used to. If they got colder, once it hits below 10 degrees in the winter, they die. The hemlock woolly adelgid is negatively affected. So climate change is all intertwined with, you know, globalization, you know, yeah, everything. So Another example is ash. The ash borers have killed almost all the ash trees. And the same thing happened a century ago nearly with Dutch elm disease, chestnut blight, 100 more years ago. So, I see, as someone who like studied these trees and got to know them all and recognizes them, I see the decline more so than most people. And so that can be distressing, but I think it can lead to a sense of feeling stuck and hopeless. But I think sort of the solution that I like to think about is the fact that the best can be the enemy of better, and that we all need to build upon small successes. So, when you're trying to face something as daunting as climate change, you can just sort of feel like, well, how could I have enough impact? How could I possibly do anything important enough to change this? And I think one of the ways to approach it is just to say, what is one small thing that I can do to begin today? And if there's some way that we can have an impact, we can feel really good about that, and we can build upon what good has come of that. And one of the nicest things I think we can do is to join a CSA, to become part of a CSA, because our decisions on what we consume and what we support through the food we buy can have a really big impact. And CSA, in a way, forces you to eat better, which is one of the things I love about it. Like we're giving people pretty large shares, and they are full of things that are absolutely great for them. And people tend to not want to waste things. When they do actually quit CSA, often it's because it's too much food for them and they can't figure out what to do with it all, and they feel guilty about it. But the other side of that is that if they do overcome that hurdle and become intuitive cooks, and they're getting all the food from one local farm who's thinking about their environmental impact, it can have a huge impact on their personal impact on the world. So join a CSA. But specifically, how do we make progress on climate change as Sisters Hill Farm? So our farming practices are based upon ecology. Being an ecologist, organic farming in general is really based upon feeding the soil and not the plant, trying to create a really healthy soil web of life, which then makes nutrients available for healthy growth of the plants. And some of these principles are diversity. So one of them is like a monoculture has very little resilience. When you're growing one huge field of a single thing, if a pest descends upon that field, or if a disease begins to develop in that field, you really have to attack it with chemicals or with some man-made intervention. Whereas if you have a huge diversity of crops and you've got a small batch of that individual thing, and then right next to it something else that's quite different, the ability for that pest or disease to impact negatively the entire field or your entire crop is very much lower. And so we have a great amount of resilience through diversity. And we see the same thing happening in natural systems like a rainforest, let's say, which is a super diverse system. And because of that, there's a great amount of stability there. We also utilize crop rotation. So we're always trying to move crops to new locations so that we don't have to use chemical interventions, things like that. So we will move all of our solanaceous, let's say tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, potatoes, to a new section of field every year, and maybe do beans and squash in those or whatever it may be. So we're always moving crops and families to different areas of the farm to help impact the ability for them to resist disease and insects. We use organic growing methods, so we focus on compost, we focus on lots of cover crops to rejuvenate the health of the soil and to fix free nitrogen from the air using biology. We use very limited amount of plastic, drip tape and a little bit of landscape fabric here and there, but we're not covering acres and acres of plastic like often conventional farms are. We minimize the use of fossil fuels. We use very low horsepower tractors, most of them, and you'll see ways as I continue the discussion where we minimize the fossil fuel use through customers picking things up, through employees living on the farm, all those kinds of things. We have solar panels on the farm, which we create our own electricity with. And we're generally conservative and thrifty. In other words, some of our tractors are from 80, 90 years ago, and we keep them in good shape. We don't use disposable packaging to distribute shares. We have containers that are very durable that we've had for 25 years that we pack shares in, pack things out of the fields in, those sorts of things. So we're very conscious of the impact of our purchasing decisions and the longevity of the products we use. The way we distribute food is also designed with the earth in mind. Here's a picture of Sister Mary Ann Gristo out with apprentices from a decade or more ago in some very beautiful, huge tomatoes. Very little waste in conventional food market, especially vegetables. If a carrot is not exactly the right length and it has a little twist in it or something, it'll be discarded. And in terms of our stuff that we are able to put in the CSA shares, a great variety of produce is acceptable. In fact, members love it. Like we do pack the shares for Bronx shareholders, like into boxes for them. But for the people that come to the farm, they'll all just be, as you saw it, out in those bins. So if somebody wants the little tiny carrots, somebody wants the little tiny potatoes, they'll pick those out. Somebody wants the huge potatoes or carrots, they'll pick those out. Little kids love ones that twist a little bit and hug each other and things like that. So there's very little food waste that way. We also have little to no spoilage because we're not shipping things long distance. We have a cooler right there at the farm. As soon as we harvest it, things go into the cooler, and then they go right out to distribution and right back in the cooler if there's anything left, so we can get it to food pantries and things. So there's also a huge reduction in food miles, the way that we deal with it. Like the average bite of food in the United States, I don't know, has traveled like 1,500 miles or 2,000 miles or something. And the furthest any of our food travels is about 70 miles down to our Bronx pickup. And that's only about 20% of our members pick up in the Bronx. About 80% of what we grow gets picked up right at the farm, so it doesn't go anywhere. Obviously, members are picking up their own food, but we try to make sure that that trip is as efficient and productive as possible, in that we give really large shares. So we don't want people coming to the farm for a tiny little share of 5 or 6 items. It's usually 12 to 15 items. You know, maybe the first couple of weeks of the year it might be a little less, but then as the season grows, it's a whole bunch of items, and it's a lot of food. And our thought process is we'd rather have them driving for a bigger quantity of food. And also the other side of that is many CSAs have a small share and a big share. And we decided early on we didn't want a small share because we didn't want them wasting the trip for a small amount of food. Our food is harvested fresh for them each pickup, so it'll last really well in their fridge. So if you don't want quite so much, you can't use quite so much because you're in a small family, then come every second week and you're not coming to the farm as frequently. And another side of this is that we schedule our farm pickups at times when people can batch their trip with something else. So a lot of people on our Saturday morning pickup are like, we're going to the dump with all our recyclables and with all our stuff, or we're doing our morning errands. And then Tuesday evening pickups are often people on their way home from work. So we try to make it so that it's fewer food miles that way as well, and they can batch it with other trips. And finally, if someone's coming from really far from the farm, I tend to try to encourage them to join a CSA closer to them so they're not driving an hour or something to the farm. So. And also our workers, we hire and train apprentices each year. So we're trying to teach them how to farm and become the next generation of farmers. And they all live on the farm. So, you know, a small farm can be as efficient as possible, but if everybody's driving from 10 or 20 or 30 miles away, that should all be factored in the total, you know, sort of food miles, fossil fuels in terms of that food production. So that's something we're glad to have that capability of having people right there on the farm. So community is the next sort of phase of this. So, you know, we want to talk about our relationship with the land, but now we also want to talk with our relationship with people. And as Sister Marianne loves to say, and I do too, but it's her signature line here. Whoops. It's about a lot more than just vegetables. So this is a picture of potato sack race from one of our picnics. We have wonderful farm picnics. We had none this past year, unfortunately, because we had like 7 rainy Saturdays in a row and we kept having to cancel. But we really try to foster community on the farm. One of the ways we do this is by sharing healthy food with people from all walks of life, as I mentioned, not just people who are easily able to afford it, but those who otherwise would not be able to afford it. Mentoring the next generation of sustainable farmers through our apprenticeship program. I just saw on Instagram a couple of days ago, one of my apprentices from, maybe 7 or 8 years in, just said that she had trained over 30 apprentices over the years, and I've trained over 50. And so I'm thinking about all those apprentices that I've trained that started their own farm, that trained their own apprentices, and it's just a wonderful, expanding of the reach that we've had over the years, which is really great to hear and think about. Members feel a sense of joy and peace often when they arrive at the farm. It's one of the things I really love hearing, is that when they come to the farm, they just go, especially some of our Saturday members, because it's just so relaxing and wonderful on Saturday. They say, sometimes I drive into the farm and I just feel this collective sense of peace, and they really enjoy walking around the fields and picking their own flowers and things like that. And they just say that it's like a grounding force in their lives. And then we also provide weekly newsletters, which we help them to try to figure out what to do with the food. We provide recipes and things like that. And we also tell them about what's going on at the farm. So, this past year when we had wildfire smoke coming from Canada, we talked about the impacts of that and our own thoughts on the climate crisis. And, when the spongy moth caterpillars were descending and eating all the trees, we talked about that. And so we also talked about good things, of course, too, how well the crops are growing. And but it really gives members a sense of how important what's going on with the climate, not only, but also they feel that connection with us as their farmers. So they feel a sense of really being connected to their food and really being connected to those that provide their food to them. So this is just one of our members since many, many years ago, just saying how much she appreciates the farm and feels like it sustains her. Other things we do for community building is pick your own. So we do have the opportunity for members who come to the farm. They can purchase a pick your own membership, which is inexpensive, and they can pick flowers and some herbs and cherry tomatoes and things like that. Really gets them feeling a connection with the farm, especially people with kids. They just love doing it with their kids and having the kids get a sense of where the food is coming from, and then, putting a ripe cherry tomato in their mouth and really discovering that they like those rich, diverse flavors, not just candy and ready-made things. So we also have picnics, which are really wonderful. We get a local band who's played at the picnics for years, and they really create a wonderful sense of atmosphere. This is another, again, this is the 3-legged race at some of our picnics. We have work parties, a few really important ones each year. We invite everybody on the 4th of July to harvest garlic with us, and we harvest over 10,000 garlic plants in about 2 hours with the help of usually about 50 members show up. It's really amazing to hang them up in our barn. We also have onion cleaning parties. We call them parties, make it seem more exciting, but it's just a really good time. We had a woman once tell us, you saved my life with that. She was taking care of her sick husband at home, and she was feeling very isolated. And just the fact that she got out and talked to friends and neighbors really had a huge impact on her life. And it's just wonderful to hear that, people can get something out of helping us out at the farm. Helping us helps them. And that's just a wonderful feeling. And we have regular volunteers who come and help us every week to pack shares for the Bronx. A number of people help us with that. And then, harvesting the field, things like that. And then finally, farm tours to apprentices from other farms and other interested parties. These are some photos of our picnic here. This is the band called Bob and the Boys. We set up some shade for them and everybody out enjoying. And these are my 3 apprentices from, I can't tell you the exact year, but maybe 2009 or something, at the picnic that day, showing off their muscles. And these are kids enjoying. This is my son, John, and Ben, and then Eva and Lita Khan, longtime farm members since like 2001, I believe. And they had a bouncy house they brought one time. So I was on stilts and I was juggling peppers for the kids while they were bouncing in the bouncy house and running through the sprinklers. So really good time had by everybody at these picnics. As I mentioned, we use these low horsepower tractors called Farm All Cubs. They were designed before herbicide use was common. I don't know why that keeps jumping forward on me, but yeah, so I built a custom marker that marks out the plant spacing, and then we can actually plant by hand and stick the plants in, and we do thousands and thousands of plants that way, over 50,000 transplants each year. And here's a view of some of the fields. Right there on the center here is Chinese cabbage. And then we have lettuces and carrots and beets and all kinds of other things. And these are sprinkler heads. And this is another one of those cultivating tractors. This is stirring up the soil between rows of carrots and beets. And again, summer fields, different summer succession fields. As I mentioned, our apprenticeship program is really something that I'm pretty excited about. These are 3 apprentices from many years back. And we teach them how to do everything that I need to do, basically. Like, I try to make sure that they have a really good overview of what it takes to run a farm, and try to get them to build the confidence and skills so they can run a similar farm themselves. Happy apprentices harvesting melons and first lettuce harvest of the year. We've got onions here and eggplant harvest. A lot of the bigger crops like eggplants and melons, we cut them in the field and throw them to somebody that brings a cart along, and that way it's much more efficient. You're not carrying as many heavy things. These are my sons, John and Ben, growing up a little bit older than that previous picture. Oh, and there's everybody washing eggplants and peppers around the wash tank. Harvesting some beautiful carrots. Some beautiful leeks. Here we are cutting some arugula and some tatsoi, early one spring. And this is a little tool that I designed for washing bunches of things. So it's on a stand and it uses a pressure washer, and you stick your bunch in there and it sprays it from 3 different directions, all 120 degrees from one another, with some high pressure water, and gets the roots really nice and clean. These are Hakurai turnips, which are a really sweet Japanese turnip that tastes absolutely fabulous raw or cooked. Slice them thin on sandwiches and things, or put in salads, or sauteed or roasted with other root crops. Really good. And that's sort of an overview of what I wanted to talk with you about today. So thanks so much for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I sort of hate these Zoom things where you can't really see people nodding in agreement or asking questions as you go or interrupting you. And so please unmute yourselves and ask me any questions you'd like. And I'm sure there are many things I meant to cover that I forgot, but yeah, it's just my pleasure to share a little bit about Sisters Hill Farm with you, and my pleasure to be involved in this work all these years. But hopefully this can elicit some fruitful conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Let me stop sharing and figure out how
Right.
to. Let's see, escape. Okay. share. There we go.
There you are. Right. So thank you.
You're welcome. Did
Each
everybody hear
time-
me okay the whole time? I hope.
I think so. Each time I hear you, it's just great. And even seeing those vivid colors of the vegetables, just great. So for those who know how to raise their hand with the computer, feel free to do that. And if not, wave, wave your hand. And then if I don't see you, either Terry or Dave might see you and you'll be able to talk.
I see William White raised.
Yes, hello, Bill. Right. Go ahead, Bill.
Dave, what I'd like to know
Yes.
is how have you experienced the effects of climate change on the farm?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just notice it getting hotter, and I notice much more extreme weather over the years. So, you know, it seemed when I began that we would have more of a regular intervals of rain, regular intervals of dryness, less extreme temperatures, less extreme rainfall events. So everything has gotten more extreme. It's much more common now to get, you know, like this year we had 7 or 8 Saturdays in a row where it was raining, you know, and so the fall was just, it was very difficult because the soil was saturated for a longer time than usual. And so like the roots of the plants didn't get the oxygen they needed to grow properly for a while. So that's one thing. And then also, you know, because everything's interrelated, you know, insect issues are larger, disease issues are larger, or perhaps they're not. Like some years, all of the bad bugs of, let's say, the little caterpillars that eat your brassicas, those little green caterpillars that end up being little moths. Some years they're just completely missing, and then other years they're out of control. So it's sort of like larger boom bust cycles of both rain, heat, drought, insects. Things are just much less regular than they used to be, is what I'm seeing. Like I said, this year was just like, it wasn't the most terrible growth year for us. Like we had 2 of our best years in the prior 2 years. But this year, like we started out with the spongy moths. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they used to be called gypsy moths. And they just totally decimated all the trees in our area. So like the trees were completely defoliated. It just looked apocalyptic. You know, so that sort of gets down, it gets you down a little bit, but also when the caterpillars were tiny, they were just floating everywhere on little things of silk. And they got all over our floating row fabric, and we'd roll up our floating row fabric and we'd have rashes all up and down our arms, you know, just sores all over our arms from these little ericaceous hairs, the stinging hairs of these caterpillars. So it didn't affect the crops necessarily, but it's just like, it feels like apocalyptic, really. And then after that, a few weeks later, the smoke came down from Canada, and you're dealing with, you know, trying to, like, should everybody work or should we not, you know? And of course we worked anyway, because we have this obligation we feel towards our members and everything else. And then, you know, things sort of settled out, and you know, it was okay. And then we had some real heavy rain in the fall. So it's kind of like that. It's like, it just is it's difficult. It kind of beats you down because you never quite know what's coming. And so you just have to be, I always tell apprentices, like, you have to be a worrier, and you have to also be able to shut that off a little bit. Because if you don't worry enough, things will go back. Like you won't take care of things well enough. But you also like need to be like, okay, I can't do anymore. This is what I can do, you know, and you have to be kind of okay with that and try to relay that to people when that's happening. But it's definitely challenging. Yeah. And I mean, I think, you know, you go to the grocery store and you see this huge variety and bounty, and maybe something costs a little more, but you know, most of us don't see that. Most people don't see that. They don't realize that climate change is real, and like farmers all over the entire world are struggling and thinking about this and going, oh man, I don't know how much longer I can do it. I don't know how much longer anybody's going to, you know, and that's when it becomes a little scary, I think.
Well, I would just say to you, I'm only about 20 miles or more further north than you.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the spring here,
Right.
I always planted garlic in the fall.
Yeah.
And none of my garlic matured this year.
Yeah.
because we didn't get rain up here until June.
Yeah.
So it's amazing the differences in areas
Right.
not terribly far away from one another.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can modulate rain. So rain well, I can modulate drought, let's say. I can deal with drought because I can irrigate. So a dry year is a very good year for me usually. It means I'm staying up late at night running irrigation all day, and it's a lot more work, but I can have amazing yields in a dry year. If it's a wet year, I get disease and I can't stop it because organically there really aren't great solutions. So a wet year means a much worse year for me than a dry year. But yeah.
Well, thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Oh, we have a wave, I think, from Nick, or is that a hands up? Nick has his hand up. Go ahead.
Nick, don't forget you have to unmute.
Unmute. Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Thank you. I have potentially a two-part question. The first part, does the CSA, I'm in the JPIC office, the Justice Office for the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth in Kansas. So I'm just wondering if the CSA provides shares for food services for like the main dining services that they use.
No, no, we don't.
Okay, cool.
We do sell like 15 shares in the past to a group of retired Jesuit priests. But the Sisters of Charity, like their main dining hall at the retirement home and things, they use a regular food service. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that eliminates my second part then.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I love the work you're doing. It's fantastic that it's been going for so long.
Thanks.
Just for curiosity, Nick, just ask your question and then it might just spur us in terms of future webinars that we're having. What was your second part to that question?
It's similar to a question you're already asking. It was how, if the dining services was using like organic farming and CSA food shares, how would they be, what's that relationship look like, and how does their menu change? Of course, you're eating more seasonally with that. So just, that's a complex question when you're making food at that large of a scale.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, I think it all depends on, you really just have to have a chef that's willing to put the work in, like
Exactly.
a lot more chopping, peeling, like even in my home, we fill our compost bucket every single day with scraps from preparing meals, and it's way harder than opening a can and, opening a bag of frozen something. And, so if you have that chef that is willing to go that extra mile, then it can be fabulous.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Regina?
Regina. Yeah.
Hi, Dave. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dave. That was really quite comprehensive and inspiring and informational. So thank you. My question is related to the fact that a lot of our ministry over the 200 years, has been in education. And your way of training and being with and providing information and skills for a new generation of apprentices just fits so well for me into that mission of education.
Yeah.
My question is, how do you recruit apprentices?
Well, I do it in a number of ways. I mean, I try to be out there as much as possible, let's say. So, I mean, we are part of what's called a CRAFT program, Collaborative Regional Alliance for Apprentice Farmer Training. And so it's a network of farmers in this region who all utilize apprentices and teach them on their farms. And we do a yearly tour for all these apprentices. And so that's one of the main ways. They come to our farm and are very impressed by what they see. And then they tell other people, or they themselves are interested in applying after that. So that's one of the avenues. In the past, I mean, since COVID, there haven't been a lot of winter conferences and things that have been live, but that was a way in the past, I would give talks at conferences and sort of get my name out there that way. Additionally, I would give a lot of input and advice on different farming Facebook groups and things like that. And I would then, you know, put out a little notice saying we're looking for our next year's crew here. There's a national database of apprenticeships and internships on organic farms through the USDA. And so we have a listing there. And then through NOFA New York, which is the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York. And then there's a Massachusetts chapter and a Connecticut chapter. We can put advertisements through those publications and on their websites. And then there's various online places. One of them is called Good Food Jobs, things like that, where people are looking for food-related work that is somehow productive and beneficial to society. So, you know, restaurants and farms like ours tend to advertise in places like that. So word of mouth, as well as all those avenues, are some of the ways we try to find the next crew each year. So
Thank you. It just, the sense of community expands
Yeah.
with the number of networks that you're part of. Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, you're welcome.
You know, Dave, when you were talking about what it was like to be a farmer in very concrete terms, what I just put in to the chat was our CTE committee, and Claire Regan really wrote the basics of it, and then other people kind of we helped edit it a little bit. But the vocation of a farmer, because we wanted to invite ourselves this Advent to reflect a little bit upon the vocation of a farmer and what does that say to our own vocation. So anyone who's interested, we put the blurbs that we're putting in each week of Advent, we put them all together. But it's a great call and responsibility. So hopefully it'll mean something to you, because we really appreciate the vocation of a farmer, because if we didn't have farmers, you know,
We wouldn't have
be here. Yes.
Remember you.
Yes. So I notice, okay, Terry and then Brenda. Yes.
I'd like to ask the Sisters of Charity of New York who are on, what impact has having the farm had on the congregation? Because I mean, it's quite a mystery to me how you started it, because you strike me as, you know, city girls from the Bronx by and large, who, you know, didn't come from farming communities, I wouldn't imagine. And how did you come to make this enormous commitment of finances and vision, and what impact do you think it's had on the community?
Anyone want to take a little bit of that?
Maybe Marianne might want to hazard some things about the early days.
Marianne, are you up to that?
I don't see her. Where is she?
Okay, they're trying to unmute. Okay, while we're waiting, I think that looks like Sheila. She's trying to find a way to unmute here. Hi, you did it, Sheila.
Okay, the early years were difficult. Dave didn't mention, but it took almost 7 years before we got acceptance for this project, because so many of our sisters were involved in education. But anyway, during that time, a group of us worked very, very hard at finding out all we could about community-supported agriculture. So it was a help. In regard to what it does for our community, I think it just helps us to realize that our education, our healthcare, everything that we have done is all connected, and it is all involves what we do at our farm. So you're healthy, you can't take care of sick people on a sick planet. So I think it has made a big impact on us. We're very proud of it. We're very proud of the work that Dave has done. We're very proud of the community that is built up. And we're very proud of the people that we can share food with.
Thank you. I noticed we have 3 other people. So that's a great question you asked, Terry, but why don't we have Brenda and then Maurice and Mary Kay, and then we can always go back to this if anyone else wants to share on that question.
I was just thinking when they were talking about with the New York charities and being from there and not really farmers, out at Nazareth, I've heard all the stories. I'm a little too young to remember, but all of the novices and candidates had to be out in the fields during exam time, picking, the vegetables and doing the berries and the orchard and all like that. Well, by the time I got there in the mid 70s, that had stopped. But I guess for probably now about 20 years, we've had like small community gardens in a plot. And 3 years ago, we have always wanted to start having a kitchen garden that could provide for the community living on campus. And there's about 75 sisters living on campus. And now this is the second year that we have had enough food. We've been able to start a salad bar and keep that going because we have a cold room now that we can put stuff in. The sisters get excited when we have a note saying this came from the garden directly, so they know where it's all coming from. And I think the thing that we haven't done that you all are doing is giving the excess, except that the local, there's about 25 who have their little plots there. If they have extra stuff, I collect it and I take it down to the food pantry that I volunteer at on Mondays. So, we try to make sure that people who are living off of campus and don't have property to be able to have a garden can have one. So we're glad that it finally has come back to raising our food.
Thank you, Brenda.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Maurice, yes.
Yes. Hey, Dave. I met you back in 1999 at a growers conference in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
I was really taken with your personality, your witness to what you wanted to do with the farm at that time. I met Sister Mary Ann. I was an intern at Genesis Farm. So I was there with Miriam McGillis and the farmers from Genesis Farm.
Nice.
And I just thank you for all that you've done over these many years. I've been your fan kind of from afar for these decades. I did start my own CSA for the Oblate Fathers near St. Louis called the Community Supported Garden at La Vista, very much like what Sisters Hill Farm is. I might just ask, what's your rate of retention every year for your shareholders? You've really grown the farm over the years. You must be very successful at people coming back year after year.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one of the difficulties with CSA is that the last time I actually saw stats for this, there was a group called, I can't quite remember, but the CSA network kind of came up with I think it was somebody who was trying to sell a program, but anyway, it was about 46% retention rate nationally, and ours is about 85%.
Wow.
It varies between 80 and 91%, 80% and 91% most years. So on the average, we're right around 85, 86%, which is great. I mean, that's really your goal, is that I try to have members for life. I want people, and that's really, really exciting when you've got people that you've fed for 20 years, 25 years. Because like, even if you don't really know them all that well, you're a part of their life, like you're a really deep part of their lives, and like the farm is really important to them, and that they eat really well, and you've really improved their health and been a part of them, and so that just is very, very rewarding. But yeah, in order to get that level of retention, I think there's a number of steps that are really important. We work really hard to try to survey our members and then analyze those surveys. And I think I even have this open. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Can I share my screen again? Okay. So let's see, screen share. So we do a survey And we asked members, you know, can you all see this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, a number of questions, but starts with the, you know, what day and did you pick up and how many people live in your household? All kinds of information, you know, what did we give you the right quantity? Were you happy with the quality? But the major part of it that I care about in terms of crop planning and retention is this question. 2 questions. Thinking about your share this season, please indicate your satisfaction with the amount of each type of produce received. And then how much do your household enjoy the following types of produce? 1 means the least enjoyable, 5 means the household favorite. And so for each individual thing, like here's lettuce. Almost everybody loves lettuce. So it's universally loved. But leeks, people that are more neutral, some people that don't like it, and some people that it's their least favorite vegetable of all. So what I tend to do is I take all these different vegetables into account and I say, well, we can't really give them too much garlic because just about everybody loves garlic, but I got to be much more careful with fennel here because in general it's neutral and some people love it and some people hate it. So what that helps me to do, and then I look at whether I gave them too much or too little based on these graphs here. And so I modify my plan to try to make sure that I'm giving people a really well-balanced share based upon the way that they're eating. And you can see this orange line in all these is just the right amount. So like if the graph looks pretty high in that center and low on either side, I know I'm doing pretty good. Let's say with broccoli, they really wanted quite a bit more. We had a crop failure in broccoli this fall. So I can take all that into account and make the share better and better each year and really tailor it to what people want. And then the nice thing is like, if I see the eggplant is not universally loved, most weeks, aside from the Bronx shares where I have to pack it for them, I can say, why don't you take eggplant or kale, eggplant or something else? And I give them a choice for those things that are less universally loved. And I just give them, you know, garlic is just everybody takes 1 garlic. So that's really helped us to make sure that it's a share that people really want. And the other side of that is we always say, people have told us it's an excellent value. And they tell us that we're giving them the right amount, it's the right variety, and that we're giving them the right amount. But we do give very big shares. So I always say take up to. So if you know you're not going to use something, you'll leave it and it'll go to someone in need. And that way it doesn't rot in your fridge. And so people feeling like they got too much food is one of the negatives of CSA and a lot of reasons people leave. But I think the big story here is like, I got 10 pounds of kale and 4 pounds of potatoes, and that was my whole share. You know, like we give a huge variety of things and appropriate amounts of them. And we always say, if you're not going to use it, it'll go to somebody who needs, so don't feel bad about it. And then finally, the overall value of the share is always quite a bit more than what they receive. So it's generally 30 to 60% more value than what they're actually paying. So if the share was this coming year, it's going to be $9.25. So it's probably worth $1,500 or so or more in terms of the retail value. So if they don't pick it all up each week, they don't have to feel bad about it. They know it's going to someone in need and they just take what they want. They'll still be pleased with the share and feel like they got a great value and excellent quality food. So that's a pretty long answer, but hopefully that covers what you were thinking of or what
Yeah.
you know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Dave.
very much.
You're welcome.
So I'm conscious of time and I noticed, thank you very much, Maurice, for question.
I'll be quicker. I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's
But
okay.
since I already had it open, I was like, this is perfect.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
No, and it shows you all the work that goes into being a farmer, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
as you said, that planning. So I know Mary Kay and Roberta and Florence Speth. So be great to get all these questions in and comments. So anything else, Maurice, before we move on? No? Okay. So Mary Kay, you have to unmute. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to give another shout out to Marianne because Marianne's a good friend. And I was with her, maybe living with her, and part of those 7 years. And she just kept persisting and persisting and persisting. And even to have the vision initially. initially. So I want to thank Mary Ann. And Dave, the presentation you gave, it touched my heart, my mind, my whole being. It was so holistic. And certainly it's more than about veggies.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You've proved that. And then as far as how it affected us, every house I lived in, we would always get a share from the first time. And then I was at Mary the Queen, and I think we got 4 or 5 shares. And the sisters were delighted when the fresh vegetables came from the farm.
Yeah.
So whether it was sisters in retirement or on mission, and Casa Esperanza was right next door to the Queen, we just knew what a value this was in the lives of our own lives, and then the lives of the people that we served. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And the first time I met you, somebody else said where they met you, was a hot summer day in the swimming pool at Stamfordville. And your 2 boys were maybe 3 feet and 4 feet, not 6 feet.
Yeah.
God bless you, and thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure, and it's wonderful to hear those stories too. And yeah, absolutely. A number of sisters have been members, and actually sister communities have paid as well for their shares all these years as well. So the number of sisters have been members since the very first year. So even though like some of the convents may not, some of the retirement homes may not take, 20 shares or something, but individual houses of sisters do and have. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary Kay. Roberta?
Yes. Well, hi. Just a comment. First of all, thank you. It was wonderful. I'm a gardener, so at this point, a container gardener, but I did have much larger ones. But what I wanted to comment on was the awareness of climate change. I was at the Shenandoah National Park.
Oh, me too.
It's one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
And I took the tour with the park guy, the park ranger. And at that time, it was the time of the Dutch elm disease.
Yeah.
And what he commented on, nothing about climate change, was now that the Dutch elms are gone, what we were able to see is the mountain laurels in bloom. And they had never bloomed before.
Yeah.
They grew, but not bloomed.
Yeah.
And then when fast forward, when you're talking about the trees now that are dying, and then on their own property, when I walk early in the morning and there's one tree in particular, it just breaks my heart to see it.
Yeah.
We think it's from the red lantern, was it called? That last summer.
Yeah.
But it's all diseased.
Yeah.
And in time that's going to affect it. But I just thought, like, now that I bet if I took that same journey with the park rangers, they would mention climate change. But at that point, it wasn't even a thought.
Yeah, I just went to Shenandoah a few years ago, and it was very sad because they're majestic, huge hemlocks in there, and they're all dead now. And it's just, it was depressing, unfortunately, in such a beautiful place. But yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Now, Florence, do you still have a question, Florence Beth, or did you?
I think you're running out of time, so I'll keep mine.
No. All right. If you have it, though, we have time for that.
I was just going to ask, do you have any the workers through government programs, like say from Guatemala and other countries?
No, we haven't. Generally, we tend to hire people that are like career changers. So a lot of people think we would have college students, but college students would be available too late to really start. We like to start people on April 1st so they learn the entire season. But they tend to be people in their late 20s, early 30s that have already had a couple career, choices and are seeing what's going wrong with the world and really want to do something positive and want to work outside, and kind of a lot of the things that led me to it. So that's generally who we find that wants to go into this.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dave, do you want to just say, I know we are about, 5 minutes from 7:30, but do you want to just say very briefly, what's the value of composting?
Composting? Well, I mean, it's very valuable, obviously. What you want really is you want to create soil life that is as multifaceted and rich as possible, and you want good tilth. So compost accomplishes all these things. It provides nutrients, it provides micronutrients, it provides the organic matter, like the raw base organic matter that all the microbes are going to feed off of, all the biota in the soil, all the macro invertebrates, the large bugs, the little bugs, the tiny bugs, the microscopic things. So basically it's fuel for the multifaceted organism that is the soil itself. Like in a teaspoon of soil, healthy soil, there's billions of life forms. And so if you're giving it, if you're adding compost to the soil, you're adding basically the fuel for all that life. But compost can be too much. Like if you're adding animal-based compost, you can actually throw minerals out of balance. Often there's too much phosphorus. And then if you're just exclusively using compost, you can actually cause eutrophication of nearby streams and things like that through runoff. So it's not a panacea. Like you can't just add compost. I mean, you can in a garden, certainly. Like you can just add a lot of compost each year in a garden, you'd be fine. But over acres and acres of soil, you want to be more integrated in terms of how you develop your, your fertility management scheme. So we do a lot of cover cropping. So cover cropping is taking it'll mine nutrients deep in the soil, the roots of certain cover crops that would otherwise be unavailable. It'll catch especially nitrogen that might leach through winter rains and things like that. And it will, if you're using a legume, it'll actually fix unavailable nitrogen in the air and make it available for the future plant through a symbiotic process with beneficial bacteria on the roots of those legumes. So we do composting, we do some organic fertilizers specifically, as well as nutrients and elements. And then we use compost as well. And then we also return a lot of crop residue to the soil themselves. Like obviously if you're eating broccoli, you're only eating the floret. So we would till the stem and leaves and all the rest of the biomass of that broccoli back into the soil. And so we're essentially sheet composting in place all that crop residue. So there's a number of ways to build healthy soil, and compost is definitely a component of it. But on a farm of our scale, it wouldn't be the only component you're going to lead to mineral imbalances. So.
And there's so much to this because, and I know now we're really at time, but when we think about the statistics on how we're losing soil, right? And then, I can't remember them right now, but how that's one of the things that's really at risk, that we're losing soil. And
if you manage soil properly, you can actually tie up carbon, which will help with global warming, but if you're constantly tilling the soil and constantly leaving soil bare and just monocropping and not growing cover crops, then you're losing all that carbon to the atmosphere.
Right.
So one little quick plug is if anybody wants to check out like videos of the farm and things, we have a YouTube channel. It is, if you go to YouTube and just search Sisters Hill Farm, we've got all sorts of videos on there. Most of that I made several years ago, but you can check out some overviews of the farm. I have a little flyby video that I was just about to share with you guys if we had enough time too, called Spring Cultivation 2020. And there's a drone that flies over the fields and you can kind of see a sense of all the fields and things. So just search Sisters Hill Farm on YouTube, or even Instagram. There's a bunch on our Instagram posts. There's lots of cultivation. You want to see how we cultivate the crops and keep them clean, and how we harvest things and all that kind of stuff.
So thank you. And Terry, I noticed that someone did ask if you could share the prayer.
Yes, I said I would.
Okay, great. Oh, okay, good. Oh, I see it. Very good.
And William was waving. I'm not sure if he was waving goodbye or had a question.
Just a question. Can one still sign up?
Oh, for the CSA? Yes. Yeah, we have room. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yep. We've renewed our current members gave everybody their chance to renew early, and now we're open to the public. So
great.
Go to sistershillfarm.org.
Great.
Thank you.
Where in the Bronx is your drop off?
Mount St. Vincent on Riverdale Avenue. Yep,
Mhm.
right at the parking lot with the solar panels up there
Yes, yeah.
as you enter.
Well, I thought this was a perfect way for us to end our 4-part series. Very, very concrete in terms of how we can be connected to the food we eat and to the land. So thank you very much, Dave. And this is really kind of the beginning as the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth and Sisters of Charity of New York kind of continue to look at, you know, how do we explore what this food print means? So, and thank you. It's great to have other members of the Federation with us too. You know, we can kind of extend this. But Terry, any last words that you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, I did it in the beginning.
Okay. So thank you very, very much. And Dave, I really appreciate this. Thank you very much.
Yes,
You're
that's-
welcome.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you all. Hopefully I wasn't too long-winded.
No, it's
Not at
great.
all, not at all.
Great. No,
Thank you
very
so
good.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I
very
will
much.
send the video out. And also that people asked for that reading for Mary McGillis, so I'll send that out as well.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dave. Good night.
Dave,
Right.
bye.
You're welcome.